WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively into a short week here. We got some football on Thursday night. We got some house cleaning to do around here with the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. It's all presented by our friends at the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with Window Nation and Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. We are moving, and if you're watching this segment, you'll see I'm having my Pappas world-famous crab cakes on. That's next Tuesday. We will be at the Pappas in Parkville, the original location. I can't say that I've been to the Pappas in Parkville anytime recently. I told Jeannie that over there. I said, I'm sort of like, I go to the Hunt Valley one. I've been to Glen Burnie. I've been to the new one in Bel Air. We'll get back to the original next Tuesday. We're also at Costas this week on Tuesday down in Dundalk. Got some great guests, including Dundalk High principal Paul Satterfield going to be joining us, as well as some other Dundalk High guests and friends. That's on this Tuesday. Pappas next Tuesday. Will be at Coco's the following Wednesday. And then we're at Gertrude's on the 30th with Dan Rodricks after Thanksgiving, as well as joining our friends at State Fair on December the 5th. It's all brought to you by the Maryland Lottery, Window Nation, and Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. I gave Luke Jones this little bit of homework. I said, Luke, offense, defense, which way do you want to go? And you're like, well, the defense is still the better side of the ball, and certainly didn't feel that way in the late going in the second half. It is such a complimentary game, and I think when I wrote about them at my column this last week and bringing all the roses and the flowers, when you're winning 37-3 and you're beating teams up, it feels very complimentary at that point. Keep the ball away, take the ball away, score points, win big. Special teams is perfect. Make all your field goals. And then the game actually starts, and the Cleveland Browns come to town, and everything went wrong for them in the early going, right? Like that Kyle Hamilton play, I'm thinking in the annals of Raven history of the McAllister returns or Ed Reed, get down, no, Jets game, just plays, right? I mean, and regular season plays, Anthony Mitchell and Ray Lewis and Eddie George, those are different kind of plays, but regular season plays, dude, it was like otherworldly. It was like something out of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a power forward blocking a shot, right? And it just goes right up in the air and easy 7 points, and you're winning just like that. Less than a minute into the game, and you kick off to start. You defer and you spot your offense 7 points right off the bat. I mean, you're feeling really good. I mean, think about it. Let's go back to before. The pregame chatter of leading into this one. It was all about the defense, right? I mean, the Browns defense, the Ravens defense, and that the flip side of that matchup was, well, the Ravens offense they're much better than the Browns offense. Statistically, and look, we know the Ravens offense hasn't been perfect, but statistically, it was the far superior group. So you looked at this and you said, okay, even if the Ravens aren't at their absolute best offensively, it's going to be a tall order for the Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson and that offense to come into Baltimore and score points and score a lot of points. And you just didn't expect that. So as much as you pointed to the defenses and how the Ravens were going to fare against Cleveland, I mean, I pointed out at BaltimorePositive.com in some of my work leading up to Sunday's game, even that 28-3 win back in week 4, keep in mind, it was really the second quarter where the Ravens put together 2 long touchdown drives. Other than that, the 2 other touchdowns came on short fields via turnovers, and they didn't move the ball all that much in the first quarter or in the second half. So not that they didn't deserve full credit for a 28-3 win on the road, even if Thompson Robinson was the quarterback for Cleveland, and he was completely out of his element. It was still a convincing win. So you looked at this game, and it was easy to say, all right, the Browns defense will be tough, and maybe the Ravens won't move the ball all that well offensively, but you just expected the Ravens defense to eat. I mean, you really did. I mean, this is a Browns offense that, even with a healthy Watson, had not looked all that great. I mean, they ran the ball, but certainly not at the prolific rate that they did with a healthy Nick Chubb the last few years. So, that was what was so startling to me, was just how much the Ravens defense struggled, especially in the second half. I mean, they started out on fire, to your point, with Kyle Hamilton, and even there, I mean, they score a touchdown. They held Cleveland to 3 field goals in the first half. I mean, it's not as though the defense was 4 in the first half. I mean, you'll take 9 points in a half of football. I mean, that's acceptable, but just the way that Cleveland controlled the line of scrimmage and the way the Ravens struggled to make tackles and the issues they had over the middle of the field. And I mean, how about the fact that Deshaun Watson went 14 for 14 throwing the ball after intermission, and that's with him going into the locker room with a gimpy ankle. So just a lot of disappointment on that side of the ball. And like I said, we've seen the offense look choppy at times. And if you had told me before the game that the offense would do what it did on Sunday, as far as whole body of work, I probably would have accepted that. Now, not fully acknowledging it wasn't great and fully acknowledging it was propped up by the pick six and the James Prochet muffed punt, but they're going up against a great Cleveland defense. But for the Ravens defense to struggle the way they did, I mean, that was really, really disappointing because, I mean, this is just a Browns offense that hasn't been that group, but you have to give them credit. I mean, they ran the ball. They were more physical. Deshaun Watson, you know who he kind of reminded me of, Nestor? Watson kind of reminded me of Steve McNair a little bit in that second half. I mean, it wasn't making these spectacular throws, but moving around, breaking tackles, scrambling when he needed to, not running away from anyone, but just being elusive enough. Certainly he wasn't 100%, but they were the better team in the second half. And Cleveland's defense, they came up big in some spots, and the Ravens defense came up small in some spots. And it just, to your point, you talked about that complementary football. Ravens just didn't get nearly enough of that, and they've been so used to their defense leading the way, even when the offense hasn't been at its best. But boy, they weren't able to do that on Sunday.
Luke Jones is here. He will be there. I would say at practice or whatever. This is a very weird week for all these teams when they play these crazy Thursday games inspired by Thanksgiving, where they'll play football all day next week. And we'll eat turkey all day, and I'll eat leftovers from all my crab cake tore pappas next Thursday as well. But this short week and what it represents and wherever we are with Humphrey and Stanley, the loss of Humphrey and what's going on the back end and how it affects the front end and where the coverage is. And to your point, look, man, they looked all world. No offense to Jared Goff or even Geno Smith in the last couple of weeks, but they played some really lousy quarterbacks the first half. And when I pointed that out, that's just me being negative or whatever. And we're about to give Mike McDonald the next job of whoever they decide to fire at the end of the year. Real quarterbacks that create time, to your point. I mean, say what you want about Deshaun Watson and his massages and his transgressions and what kind of a human being he is and all of that. When he's focused on the football field, there's a reason they gave him all this money. There was a reason 4 franchises went out of their way to try to get him instead of Lamar. The ones that wanted him didn't want Lamar. Same teams. Didn't have a quarterback a year later. None of them bid on Lamar. So that would say how his perception as a football player is, and that he was brought in to come and do what he did on Sunday here by all the Cleveland pundits and the national pundits. But defensively, if Humphrey's not going to be Humphrey, and I look at him a little bit like Ronnie Stanley, like, you used to be really good, but that a lot of guys used to be good when they were 23 or 24 or 25, and they get to be 28, 29, 30, and they get to have an injury or 2 or 3 and miss a week, a month, a year and a half, 2 years, and they get hurt again. I went from good health, and it was crazy because when on Sunday the game goes off, I'm watching the game. The front of our website, the lead story was talking about Lamar's good health. I think a piece I did with Dennis last week that we put on the front of Baltimore Positive, the way we do things. And I'm not the jinx guy or the Xbox cover and we're going to get guys injured or whatever, but man, health, what that represents, and playing without Marlon Humphrey and playing without Ronnie Stanley or playing with gimpy Ronnie Stanley and Morgan Moses, who's known for his ability to show up and play, hasn't played for a couple of weeks. This is where the season gets a little tender. And to your point, they're 7-3. Number two, their catbird seat. They got double buys coming up, including tough games and whatever. But the games are going to be tough. The quarterbacks are going to be real, and they're going to need whatever that mojo they had defensively against Detroit at home, defensively against Seattle at home. They're going to need to pack that in a lunch pail and figure that out in LA in 2 weeks, and figure it out in Jacksonville, and figure it out in San Francisco. And more than that, figure it out against Burrow on Thursday night, where, say what you want about them, they're really dangerous. This is a really dangerous game on Thursday night on short rest, because I don't know what we're going to see health-wise from our team. And I know the Bengals stunk it up on Sunday as well. And these games are gut check games, probably. Fourth quarter, 10:30, you're going to be tired. I'm going to be tired. We're all going to be tired watching this game. And Justin Madubuike is going to be out there on his 165th play in 5 days or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you hope it's not that many, but I mean, Cleveland ran 78 plays, and we'll keep it focused on the defense, and we'll get to the offense, and we'll talk about where they are and where they are with Ronnie Stanley. Kevin Zeitler left the game late.
Who played the most in the 78 plays defensively?
Can you seven? I mean, it was the secondary. I mean, you're talking about Kyle Hamilton. You're talking about. I was shocked by this, how Marcus Williams played all but one snap. Geno Stone went back to the complimentary role. Now, keep in mind, they're in nickel way more than base. Nickel is the base defense in this day and age. So Stone was still on the field plenty, but Hamilton played every snap. Roquan Smith played every snap. Patrick Queen played every snap. And this is typical, but they played 78 defensive snaps.
Well, that's my point.
A lot.
My point is, once we get to the fourth quarter on Sunday night, and same thing for the Bengals. Just go look through the Bengals offensive line, which is all, it is what it is. And that's why this game's unfair, right? I mean, I'll bitch about that. Like I can bitch about, anything that's corruption in Maryland politics. But I could say Thursday night football, man, waking up Friday and judging either one of these teams it's survival of the bestest. They're not even fittest, maybe fittest.
Yeah. I mean, and the saving grace is Cincinnati's going through it too, and Cincinnati's going on the road. Not that Cincinnati to Baltimore is a particularly long flight, but they do have the challenge of adding that. But
they have a lot less rope on the season.
And I'll call back to something a couple years ago. As much as we've talked about recent history and the Ravens blowing fourth quarter leads and all that, think back to that Minnesota game a couple years ago. Overtime. Do you remember who the Ravens played the following week? And when I say the following week, 4 days later, they went to Miami for that Thursday night game. That ugly, brutal, terrible loss. And I think part of the reason why it was especially ugly and brutal and terrible was they played a lot of snaps the previous, that previous Sunday. So
was that the Sunday when I asked Lamar about running the ball 21 times? I think it was. It was the Minnesota game. Yeah,
probably. Yeah. But I was just talking about the fact that they played an overtime game. They played a lot of snaps. So the defense, as much as they're licking their wounds because of just how great this defense has been. I mean, I said it, and I'll still say it. I still think this is the best defense they've had since the days of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. We're talking over a decade now. I still feel that way. I'm not going to completely be dismissive of everything they did because of one performance. And
in the first half, it showed up. The first half was okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot. Of Cleveland's 3 field goals, those drives were 49 yards, 70 yards. Okay, they gave 70. No,
but field goals are what they do. Even when you bend, you don't break. That's how
you can't. You can't expect them to pitch a shutout, and that's my point. But yeah, I mean, 78 plays. Madubuike played 58 snaps, so you're talking about the D line there. Michael Pierce 46, which is that's not too high, but that's a lot for Michael Pierce at the very least. Van Noy played 47. So I mean, Marlon Humphrey. I mean, some of the early speculation. I mean, there's some concern. I mean, I saw David Chow, the Pro Football Doc, speculated about a potential Achilles, and maybe there'll be clarity as someone's hearing our conversation over the course of the next day or so. But I mean, you're doubting he's going to be out there Thursday night. And you're already had some questions as far as Marcus Williams coming back. Remember he had the pec injury early in the season. Is his tackling up to snuff? I already mentioned the middle of the field looked much more vulnerable than it's looked this season. And again, the other team tries to, and you made the point about Watson. I mean, the only thing I would say is Deshaun Watson hasn't looked like that guy. I mean, since they signed him, late last year when he came off suspension, and even before the shoulder injury this year, I mean, his performances where he's looked like the guy that Cleveland gave 230 million guaranteed to, he hasn't looked like that guy very often.
And he
And
was gimpy doing it.
right, right. And I mean, look how bad the first half was. I mean, he was 6 of 20 at halftime. He 6 of 20 through the air, and he was 14 for 14 in the second half. Like I said, it reminded me a little bit of Steve McNair in the second half. I mean, just enough big throws and scrambling, getting away from tacklers and extending plays and doing just enough. But it was just for this defense to play the way that it did in the second half. I mean, it's just you don't expect them to be perfect, but they had an identity that you'd really grown accustomed to watching on a week in and week out basis. And that just wasn't who they were in the second half. I mean, missed tackles and not controlling the line of scrimmage. And how about the fact we haven't even mentioned this, Nestor? Cleveland was without their top 3 offensive tackles on Sunday. I mean, Jedrick Wills on IR this past week. I mean, they lost Jack Conklin back in week 1. DeJuan Jones, their starting right tackle since week 1, was out
We
on
got beat by their
Sunday.
backups.
Yeah, and that's not to say that the pass rush was completely an absentee. It wasn't. I mean, they sacked Watson 4 times, and they had some opportunities to bring him down other times, but probably not as disruptive as you would have liked to have seen, given that tackle situation for Cleveland. So,
And then tackling, the tight end after that,
sure,
and figuring out I mean, it was at all 3 levels, man.
yeah,
I mean, it really
no
was.
doubt, no question about it. I mean, the second half, I mean, gave up 24 points, and now, to be fair, in the same way that we talked about how the defense spotted Lamar Jackson in the offense, 7 points right off the bat. There was the pick 6 in there. You can't put that on the defense, with the deflected pass. But, I mean, you just look at that second half, Cleveland, 17 plays, 75 yards, 10:09. That finished with the Kareem Hunt touchdown after the Ravens had thrown the touchdown, after Lamar had thrown the touchdown to Beckham on third down to open the third quarter. And then you look at the fourth quarter. I mean, the Watson's 10-yard touchdown pass to Elijah Moore, 6 plays, 75 yards. I mean, and then the final drive, again, they marched down the field. I mean, they sustained drives, and we'll get to the offense, but again, you talked about this idea of complementary football. The defense couldn't get off the field. They weren't very good on third down. And the offense couldn't sustain drives. They couldn't really get going in the second half. I mean, even the Gus Edwards touchdown after the muffed punt, look at the sequence of events there. So they could not get into anything that they really pride themselves in doing in that second half. And I'll continue to go back to it. Even with all that said, they led for 59 plus minutes on Sunday. And the Oweh strip sack, if they fall on it, they probably win the football game. So they were still that close. Even with all the imperfections, they had their opportunities, and they just didn't take advantage. But for the defense to play the way that it did in the second half, I mean, you could see it on Justin Madubuike's face. You could see it on Kyle Hamilton's face. You could see it on Brandon Stevens' face. In that post-game locker room.
There's no way to feel good about that. 2 touchdown lead.
Yeah.
It's hard to look at the guys on offense and say, what's up? And I just, the short week's good in this way.
It is.
But it's bad in the way that it's the Bengals coming in and the stakes of the game. And that the Bengals aren't going to get their best shot. They're not going to get the Bengals' best shot. And that's all well and good. But you got to find a way to, and like the Steelers say, or I heard Tomlin say, we're not going to apologize for winning. You know what I mean? And nor should they.
Yeah, and they're the home team. I mean, the thing that helps in a Thursday night game like this, unlike a game where you go, like I mentioned the Miami game 2 years ago, or you would go on the road or play an NFC team, there's not as much preparation that goes into in the sense that, not that you're not preparing, but the Bengals, they know you. I mean, from a mental standpoint, you kind of know what you're going to get, right? I mean, you gotta pressure Burrow. You can't let him get out, even though he's not going to take off and run for yardage. You can't let him extend plays. I mean, we've seen that. What's made the Bengals better in recent weeks, Burrow's calf is healthy, and he's been able to get out and extend plays and make plays, escape in the pocket and on the run. I mean, he had that gorgeous touchdown, running to his left. But at the same time, Cincinnati's, they're not immune to inconsistency and coming up small in some big spots. I mean, we saw that on Sunday. I mean, as much as they started out hot on that opening drive, I mean, Burrow threw a couple interceptions like Lamar did on Sunday. So it, yeah, in the sense of both these teams knowing what they're capable of at their absolute best, you do kind of hate the idea of a Thursday game from an entertainment standpoint, just knowing that, yeah, it's going to be tough for either team to be at their best. I mean, both teams had some injuries in Sunday's game. I mean, I assume we're not going to see T. Higgins because he hurt his hamstring this past week and he missed Sunday's game. Jamar Chase has been banged up with the back. So both teams are going to be missing some guys, and they're going to be guys playing at less than 100%. But boy, it's go time. And I mean, this game is so critical. I think it's more critical for Cincinnati, but it's so critical for the Ravens too. I mean, as we said, you win this game, you've got a lot of rest coming up here over the next 3.5 weeks. You play one game over the basically 3.5 weeks following this Thursday night game. So you've got a lot of time to rest, a lot of time to recalibrate, and then you prepare for what's going to be a challenging remaining schedule after that. But you lose, you Cincinnati's right back in the thick of things. The winner of Cleveland Pittsburgh on Sunday is suddenly in first place. And not that the Ravens are doomed by any stretch of the imagination, but you're not feeling very good about yourself considering where you were 6 days earlier. You wake up Friday morning and you're suddenly 7-4. I mean, that just doesn't feel good, compared to where they had been a week ago. So, but if you win and you're 8-3 and you're still in sole possession of first place, and you've really put the Bengals in a major hole at that point in time. And yeah, it's not to dismiss Cleveland or Pittsburgh. Their record is what it is, and they've got a much easier remaining schedule, but you're just feeling so much better. And everything is still sitting right there, including your chance, keeping yourself in the conversation and having a chance to catch Kansas City for that number 1 seed. I mean, if you win Thursday, all of that is still sitting right there for you. You lose, all of that is feeling much more fleeting, much more tenuous, and then you're talking more in terms of got to figure out a way to win this division. So I mean, that's just how important it is. And for this defense, they got to shake off what's going to be some fatigue after playing as many snaps as they did, and they got to shake off let's face it, they got their feelings hurt on Sunday. I mean, this defense was drawing comparisons to 2000 and 2006. I mean, some of the very best defenses in the history of this franchise, which is a really high bar. And they had done that through their first 9 games. But
now
what we
they got
saw
to do
in
it against Burrow, Herbert,
sure,
Lauren. I mean, we're just
sure.
going to go through this, and this is going to a loss here. 7-4 still sounds great, and it sounds awesome, and like all that. But it would really be devastating, and it would certainly bring all the boats in order. I mean, you've got this scenario where the Steelers are going to be in first place Sunday if they lose Thursday night. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, whoever wins, Cleveland or Pittsburgh on Sunday, I mean, they'd be in sole possession of first place. I mean, a lot of football to go. And that's another reminder here. You and I, and we were as guilty of this as anyone, talking about Super Bowl and this, how invincible this team had looked.
And
over
it's
the
made a
last 3 or 4
flight.
weeks.
When do I get a hold of him?
I mean, it's just, it shows how fleeting this can be. It shows how quickly things can change.
Power rankings.
I mean, it's just the truth. Buffalo. We've mentioned this multiple times. Look how great Buffalo looked in late September and early October. Yeah, they had lost to the Jets in week 1, and that was ugly. And Josh Allen threw all those picks, but they had 3 straight blowout wins and best point differential. They looked like they were back on track. And then what happened? A couple injuries, inconsistency, and you look at the Bills now. I mean, they're kind of in that same boat as Cincinnati, scrambling after dropping a couple too many games early in the season and really finding themselves behind the 8 ball. So things can change quickly. And to your point, you mentioned the health. You're healthy until you're not anymore, right? I mean, it sounds silly to say that. It's such a simplistic phrase, but you looked at where this team was health-wise, and then suddenly you're talking about Ronnie Stanley again, as we've talked about way too much the last 3 or 4 years. You're talking about Marlon Humphrey again, which, potentially this could be something that's more concerning than the foot surgery, where at least that was in August and you knew he was going to be back relatively early in the season.
Well, how would they manage without him? I mean, how would they manage without Stanley the rest of the way, right? And I don't even. I mean, you were nonplussed by how he was playing recently, and then I saw the beginning of the game, and I thought, boy, I never looked at John Ogden even late in his career when he had the bad toe and thought he looks way slower than he looked. And that's not a position where you can get by.
Yeah.
When it happens quick because of who's on the other side of the ball. They're going to have some Myles Garrett, some TJ Watt, some, Hanks, somebody, that's going to be coming before it's all over with. That's such an important part of this. I mean, Michael Orr making movies, Blindside, left tackle, John Ogden. I've already thrown that out. I could also throw out Jared Gaither and Bryant McKinney and some others.
Eugene Monroe.
But when you mention any of those names, you don't think, oh, Hall of Fame Super Bowl. You think, who's our next left tackle? And right now we're to who's our next left tackle, because I don't know that Ronnie Stanley is going to come back and play Super Bowl caliber left tackle for this team for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, as long as it's going to need to take. I'm not vibing that from that position or him. And I would have said that in good health last week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, and look, I've been critical of him at times. I think some of the criticism, I don't mean from you, I think some of that had been probably a little over the top. I mean, it's not like he was awful, but was he playing like a $20 million tackle? Was he playing like the 2019 All-Pro left tackle that he had been? No, he wasn't. So I think what complicates this, Nestor, is you're also talking about Morgan Moses on the other side. You mentioned this a little bit earlier, but whatever his shoulder, whether it's a shoulder, pec, whatever it is, they're calling it a shoulder. I mean, this is something he's been dealing with since week 4. And I think the thing that was troubling about Sunday was he was a full participant in practice all week this past week, and he didn't go. That to me makes me wonder, whatever the current state of Morgan Moses is right now, I'm not sure that's getting a whole lot better over the course of the rest of the season, meaning maybe he's dealing with something that he's trying to put off surgery and
also
is going to have
he's
to
a
try
guy,
to manage.
if we're going to talk about toughness and whatnot,
Sure.
He's a guy that always played.
Yeah, I mean,
he's not playing. It's something and it might be something like, hey, I need off these couple of weeks, get me back 100% after the Charger game, me, let's just get through this. And now, maybe I wouldn't say you wouldn't rush anybody back when they're 7-3. You're 7-3. If you got a 30-something guy, that getting him 100% healthy for the games at the end that matter, when you feel like we had a 2-touchdown lead beating the Browns without him, right? So that's the way you want to feel about it. And certainly this is not the game to fart around with any of that on Thursday night, because guys are just going to be, and we talked at length about this, physically exhausted. They just are.
Yeah. I guess the point I was trying to make is, whatever 100% is for him at this point in time, I don't know if that's his normal 100%, but because of what you just said. I mean, he's missed 3 games this year. This guy hadn't missed a game since the end of the 2014 season. So, for Morgan Moses to miss multiple games, I'm not sure we're talking about something that's going to get back to 100%. Now, can it get back to 85% or 90%? That's a different
It's not
conversation.
good enough to beat Myles Garrett. That's not good enough against TJ Watt.
Well,
I'm not being mean. I'm just saying that can get you back on the field, but that'll get you crushed. Over 70 plays,
Okay, but you just named 2 guys. You named 2 guys who might be the 2 best defensive players in the league. And by the way, I'd be remiss, Jonathan Ogden looked old against Dwight Freeney late in his career, who was a similar caliber player to Myles Garrett in terms of.
Yeah, well, that's my point. 90% against anybody in their prime is.
We're splitting hairs here, Nestor. I'm just telling you where I think they are with Morgan Moses right now. The bad news is, you can say that, fine. This team's not nearly as good if Patrick McCary and Daniel Faalele are their offensive tackles moving forward. So that's the concern here. Regardless of where they're going to be with Stanley over the next few weeks, I would assume the history of Ronnie Stanley, I'm assuming there's no way we're seeing him Thursday night at the very least. So you have that. Can Morgan Moses play? I mean, he's practiced. He practiced this past week. Can he play? Maybe the idea was to hold him out for this game, with the idea that you wanted him out there against Cincinnati, although Trey Hendrickson and Hubbard have been banged up, and we'll see what their status is. So maybe you're not going to get a Bengals defensive line at full strength, but yeah, this is a concern. There's no doubt about it. And we haven't even mentioned talking about the fallout of Marlon Humphrey. I mean, do they have better cornerback depth than I thought they did back in August? Sure. Rock Yassin, Ronald Darby, who's not even playing, even though he played pretty well early in the season. Brandon Stevens has played at such a high level, so it's not as though they're sunk, but you're talking about $20 million a year players here, in the case of Stanley and Humphrey. Of course you're going to you'll be hurting if you don't have them out on the field. Doesn't mean your season's over. There's one guy on this team that season over if Lamar Jackson goes down, but boy, it makes things more difficult, makes things hairier. There's no question about that. So, we're going to have to see how this looks on Thursday night. In the case of Stanley and Humphrey, you hope that these aren't catastrophic long-term type injuries, but at the same time, I mean, it's next man up. Cincinnati's not feeling sorry for them. No one's, Pittsburgh and Cleveland aren't feeling sorry for them. Pittsburgh lost one of their inside linebackers, Quan Alexander, to a season-ending injury on Sunday. This is part of it. The Ravens have learned that painfully the last few years. So, we'll just have to see how it plays out. But whatever the case, need a much better defensive effort on Thursday night. That's stating Captain Obvious kind of stuff with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the Bengals offense coming to town.
Short week, big test on Thursday night for the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. I would say Luke's going to be out in Owings Mills, but couple sleeps and boom, it's going to be mini bye and all that. So maybe Luke will have a nice pumpkin pie. Maybe he'll come to Pappas next Tuesday with us for some crab cakes. We're going to be at Costas this Tuesday, Pappas next Tuesday. We're going to be at Coco's the following Wednesday after Thanksgiving. We're moving to Gertrude's at the BMA on the 30th with Dan Roderick. We're going to be up at Hollywood Casino in Perryville on December the 1st. A lot of crab cakes in the aftermath to go with our stuffing and our figgy pudding. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.